guys, what's up? So this is getting to know your friend interview conversation. I've known Anna since, I want to say 2012. We're now 2021, so that's 7 years. Is it 7 years? 2012? 9 years. It's been 9 years. No, has it? No, 2013. So it's 8 years. So I've known Anna for 8 years now. And this is the first time I've actually got to know her. We don't work together. Normally our circles don't really mix. Actually, now you think about it, now we have like several people connecting. But back then, I think our connections were few. But this is just a get to know you conversation. One thing I do want to note though is the sound quality. It didn't sound bad when we were conducting the interview, but when I play it back, she seems kind of low, so you may want to adjust your volume accordingly. One thing I adore about Anna is that she seeks out knowledge. Like she's constantly wanting to learn and wanting to improve herself, wanting to be a better human being, to be a better person. She reads a lot and she's like a wealth of knowledge. Like one of the things you'll notice in the interview is that she's quoting other people. And my memory is horrible. Like it's horrible. But she really like holds on to these little nuggets and incorporates that into her soul, into her life. Another thing we talked about relating to the current times is she was raised in a white space. She was assimilated in this white space. But yeah, there's this other part of her, this other culture that she is also getting to know. And at the same time, she's also getting to know other cultures. And that was just so fascinating to me because not to say I rejected it, but it's like I tried that and I felt like I was losing myself. And we didn't get into this part. This is me after me listening to it and figuring out what I'm going to say for this intro, is that she didn't lose herself in someone else's culture. She's kind of making room for it for her, if that makes sense. She does that extremely well. This is one of those things that this is how we learn from each other. I mentioned this in the interview, and I think I mentioned it in a couple of past interviews, and I'm telling you right now, is when I play back and I listen to the content for editing, I learn so much. Like that little thing, that little nugget that I just expressed to you guys, the fact that she's making room for everybody and she's really thinking about it and injecting it into her, but yet Anna is still Anna. Another thing that I really appreciate is her bluntness and her ability to cut through the BS. Like she sees the truth, and that is so rare. I mean, of course everybody's human and she probably, she's human. At least on the surface level. I'm not in her life. Hopefully, post-pandemic, our friendship will grow. But immediately what I've sensed and through this conversation is her ability to stay who she is. And, we're all, at that age now. Like if I met her when she was 20 or, 25 or even 18, she could have been like a completely different person than she is now. But, grown ass Anna, this is who she is at this moment. So yeah, so I hope you guys enjoy the conversation. I have a backlog of interviews that I need to get through. I want to stay with getting this stuff out in 2 weeks. I know it's a lot of stuff going on. One day I'll debrief on everything, do another one of those me only talking podcasts. But I have a lot of interviews I need to share with you guys. So just be patient and it's coming. So I hope you enjoy this interview. How do we meet?
I think we met at a Women in Architecture event. You were doing the lecture series. You were moderating and being the rock star. And I thought you were really killer and wanted to be your friend, but was kind of nervous and shy. So I kind of admired you from afar for a while.
I remember meeting you, and you volunteered too.
Yeah, I've been active with AIA Northern Virginia for a while. When I was in grad school in early 2000s, I worked with Debbie at the chapter house as a grad student, and then who knew I would become her neighbor later on, but we're really good friends, and I would do anything for her because she was just a great person and really cared about the membership and really the local things going on, and that's where I felt I connected the most. So, but then started out working with her on construction and kind of behind the scenes planning committee, and then getting into Young Architects Forum, which was a long tenure for me. I was co-chair or chair for almost 8 or 9 years, which is too long. And then Women in Architecture was always something I was, working with on the side or attending events. That's where we met, and then decided to step up and get involved more in the last year as the co-chair.
What was your passion with women? Why? Because there are some women out there who just don't care about women's topics.
I feel I've always been very lucky and blessed to have been given opportunities, whether it was, from men or from whoever. And I always feel it's important to pay it forward. And I remember talking to a friend of mine from college who wasn't even in architecture, but I was saying that I really wanted to help advance women in architecture because when I was in high school, I was one of 2 girls in our drafting class. When I was in college, I did the community college route for a few years. And so I was one of 2 women in that school. And then I went to Florida A&M for my undergrad. And it was maybe, 1 in 6 there. And then grad school at Virginia Tech was much more, maybe 40, 60. So it always felt women weren't represented, but the guidance that I received was good from men, but I just felt hearing it from another woman would be just as awesome. So why couldn't I be that person? So It's always been important to me as an architect to try to explain things and mentor as we go, so to speak, on the daily things, but also then be representation for other women to say, you could be this, you can lead projects and teams, and you can command a room and not be considered bossy or overbearing or whatever just because you have an opinion. And I do feel that a lot of the women that I work with don't have that same hesitancy of speaking out that I felt when I was first starting. Oh, well, I'll just sit in the room and I'm just glad to be here and I'm just going to observe. And I'm an introvert anyway, so I do that anyways before I try to speak or anything. But I find that the newer generations of women, which is great, are less hesitant to ask those questions and speak up. And I'd love to continue encouraging that.
Why architecture?
It's weird, but I was in the 4th grade.
Playing with Legos or something?
Well, I guess I don't remember what I played with when I was a kid. I mean, I have a twin sister, an identical twin. So I always had somebody to play with. And we were in this gifted program at school, which meant one day a week we went to another school. And I took an architecture class. I don't know why, but then we went on a field trip to Seaside when it was under construction. It's a new urbanism development down in Florida. I grew up in Florida, a Panhandle. And something about a place that was being made to look nothing I'd ever seen. Brick sidewalks, really vertical, special houses. And it was just something about that visit was just remarkable to me. This is a place that somebody is making and is intentional about. It's not just another tract house or, at that young age, you're not really thinking about what is, architecture, what is space, what is light and air. And just something about that really kind of hit home to me. So I wasn't really on a path per se. I took drafting in high school just because it was interesting to me. I like to draw and just kind of got there. So then I took a non-traditional path where I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I don't think I had, guidance counselors telling me yes or no, do this or that. So I went to local community college, got an architectural drafting degree, 2-year thing, and then wound up at Florida A&M, which at the time I did not even know what an HBCU was, but it's close to home and they have an architecture program. It wasn't, I was really looking and understanding what I was really getting into until I got there. But then I realized that I loved it. And then it was hard and I really liked the challenge, and it was a thriving environment and had some good teachers and pushed me up to this area because our FAMU had a place with Virginia Tech with their Washington Architecture Consortium. So I came here for my 4th year and really kind of experienced, the collaboration with all the different schools that were sending students, and then having the urban environment where you could work in the morning and then go to class in the afternoon and be able to walk everywhere. It was a really marvelous thing that kind of brought me back here once I graduated with my bachelor's down in Florida.
You met your husband in school?
Yes, it was one of those classic, you're the only good looking guy and we're always together. So no, I do remember when I first met him, he was transferring in and he was kind of hanging out outside. I was, oh, you're new. So we just, we're working together as friends, and he was with somebody and I don't know what I was doing. I wasn't serious with anybody. So, but it turned out, we liked each other, and he kind of came up to Virginia Tech here with me for that 5th year or 4th year experience. And then we got engaged and went back to FAMU, and he finished his bachelor's 5-year degree. And then I worked for a year down there at Keenan Associates, he was a Nigerian immigrant, and was a really great place to kind of start out and see leadership from a different direction from the beginning. It was great. And then moved up here and I did my master's and started working, and that's where I met Debbie and had some good opportunities from, small jobs and stuff. And I think that the important thing that I try to press on students now is get a job when you can, as soon as you can. Get a job in the field and just kind of get that experience and start understanding what a firm does. And, I know it's a challenge now in COVID and all to get a job in a firm, but start from the beginning and just see what all the little crazy things you're going to get into early, so you can kind of figure out what you want to do, even though I didn't know what I wanted to do for a long time. But it works. And it also looks good when people are hiring, that they know, oh, you've been working somewhere, you know what to do somewhat, if you take direction or whatever. So I do encourage you to try to get a job and try to work, on your summers or when you're home for winter break and all, and just get that experience when you can.
Is he from Florida too?
No, he's from all over. He was born in New Jersey, and his dad was a stockbroker for Prudential. And then they moved to Wheeling, West Virginia when he was 6, and he grew up there. And then he was in the Marines. He's had all sorts of different lives. In the Navy, and then he went to the Marines, and then he eventually got out and was in Columbus, Ohio with his Marine buddies there, going to Ohio State, and he got into the architecture program there, and it was very conceptual and very different. He's more of a practical, technical, tactical guy. So he came down to Florida A&M. His parents had moved and retired to Ormond Beach, and he was, like I said, with another person at the time, and that's how he kind of wound up at Florida A&M, because he was down there because his parents were there, his lady friend was there, and so, but then we met. So
love at first sight.
Something like that. I mean, it just seemed it was very easy and comfortable. We were sitting across from each other in an environmental technical class or something. And this is so embarrassing, but I'll tell you. We were, flirting or whatever, and I air shot him a booger from my nose.
That's you.
He caught it in his mouth. That was love at first sight, I guess. And that's what, when I asked him
this is the first taste of me.
When I asked him when he knew, when you shot me the booger. My air boogers are only for him.
Oh, that should be a Hallmark card. How was it to go to a predominantly Black school for you?
I would say the architecture school, I really didn't venture off into campus much. We were so busy in architecture school, but the few times that I'd have to go to, the registrar or whatever, it was definitely eye-opening. And I do feel sometimes I was this privileged person that didn't belong there. I had one experience where I was trying to get financial aid because my parents were great. I was adopted with my twin. They were Caucasian. And I had just a little more background. I had 2 other adopted sisters and 2 biological brothers. And so there were 6 of us, and Alice and I, my twin, were the youngest. And they had high school degrees, and then they went into the Air Force. They didn't really have a college plan. So they didn't really know how to push us or prep us. And so it was learning a lot on my own and figuring it out, but then trying to figure out how to pay for it. And so with financial aid, I had all this paperwork and things and trying to figure out how to get a, Pell Grant or whatever, if it was just only loans available to me or whatever. And I just remembered this lady was just so mean to me, and I don't know why. I just felt, I was coming to her for help, and she was not helpful, just to say the least. And so I remember going up, after talking to her, I went to the vice president's office, and actually, ironically, John was there, my husband, and he was there to talk about something else. And he saw me, and I was literally crying, and he said, you go ahead and talk first. And I went in and I had, a conversation with her. I just was, I don't know why she doesn't want to help me. I don't know. And I just asked her to make copies of this for me. And she just told me to, I don't make copies for you. And it was just such a weird thing. And maybe, trying to look back at it, I don't know if somehow I presented myself as somebody who was entitled and uppity, but I just felt at the time I was just trying to get help. So the chancellor or vice president, whoever I talked to, made a call, and, I went back down to the registrar's office, and all of a sudden I was being helped. I thought I should have been helped. And it was, it was nice, but at the same time, I wish I hadn't had to go through that.
You had to go. Yeah, right. She should have just.
Yeah. So, but all my other, experiences on campus were pretty good. I took some sort of theater class, which I'm an introvert, and I don't know why I chose that, but it was some sort of elective that I needed. And it was horrible for me because we had to recite something, and but anytime I went out on the campus, I wasn't necessarily singled out because I wasn't Black. It was fine, but it was just those experiences of going to get help in a place where I thought I should be able to get help. That was a challenge.
I'm pretty sure she was mean to everybody.
Maybe so.
So did you stay on campus? Was it close to home?
I had an apartment, and the first year I had a roommate that I just knew from home. She was going to Florida State. And then the second year I had other roommates. And so if I wasn't at school, I was working at home, or I was waiting tables, or I was going back to where I lived in Destin and working on the weekends and then coming back. So I was just always either working or going to school. So I didn't really get into college life at all. And I feel that even when I started at Virginia Tech, I went to Blacksburg once, and the rest of the time was the satellite school, and I've never been into football or that kind of lifestyle. So it just was happening for others, and that was good for that. But I just wasn't interested in college life, I guess.
Comparing the two, Virginia Tech and FAM architecture programs, how were they different or similar? Or
well, it was when I first got to FAMU, it was a crash course over the summer, and my professor was Lalo Robles, and I don't remember where he was from, but he was either from South America. He was from South America, and I'm sorry, I can't remember where, but it was so different from any kind of class I'd ever had, and just criticism of your work and getting used to somebody criticizing your process or developing a process to criticize, and just all of that was an awakening. But it also was invigorating, and it was a challenge that I felt I'm up for this, and always tried to single out the people who thought they were going to be the best and the brightest in the class, and really tried to elevate myself to their game and challenge myself to what they were doing. So I think that kind of goal of seeking out the brightest students and not necessarily being competitive as I'm taking you out, but really more, I want to be able to elevate myself and push myself because, I think you're good. So I think that kind of started early on and became kind of my mantra, is always finding that level in class and challenging myself, even with Virginia Tech. I do think that I enjoyed the more practical side of architecture and pragmatic that Florida A&M taught. But then when my foundations were kind of set, and having that experience of going to the WAC when it was the Architecture Consortium, we had students from Yokohama, Japan, the Bauhaus in Germany, Oxford, England. So it was really a melting pot then, and Argentina and LSU and Cal Poly. So it was great to kind of have this new dearth of different experiences and different kinds of teaching that I felt, okay, I could be a little more conceptual and start really thinking about architecture in a different way. I was fortunate enough to have Jan Holt and Marco Frascari at the time, teaching at Virginia Tech. And Marco had a really passion for how food and architecture are similar. And Jan was all about how scale and animals and all kind of came into architecture. So it was really kind of a different thought process of really thinking outside of just technical and pragmatic things and getting more involved with just the other parts of life that make architecture good and make life good.
Are you your twin?
Yes and no. I feel I've always been really driven, and even I don't know where that came from. And I've always known what I wanted to do and have kind of figured out my way to get there, even though I might not have had a path or somebody helping me along the way. And we just kind of took different paths. We're still close. And for a while we weren't. I think when you grow up and somebody looks exactly like you, you're, could you just get away from me? I got to find myself. in those teenage years and all that, but she went off to college somewhere else, and we weren't super close then, but after school and kind of figuring out what we were doing. And I was in school, and then John and I met, and then school, and then got married, and then started working, and just kind of always had my path kind of figured out. And she kind of was a little more roundabout way. So it hasn't been the easiest journey for her, but I think that even though we're different in different ways, we'll both have eaten ramen noodles the same day. It's just weird.
It's a weird twin thing.
Yeah, totally weird twin thing that we'll do something that the other one did almost at the same time, or get a haircut that was really similar that we hadn't talked about, or whatever. So there's still some really deep connection. And the last few years, 2012, our mom died, and then 2014, our dad passed away. So it's really been us the last few years, and trying to still be a family. We're not as close with other brothers and sisters, and one of my older brothers had passed. And so trying to figure out what the new family dynamic has been kind of hard, but making priorities that they're important, and that I want to be part of my nephew and niece's life, and kind of be that aunt that hopefully shows them really cool stuff and 3D perspectives.
Find some Legos or something.
Yeah. Oh, they're totally into Legos already. So
is she in Florida still, or?
Yeah, she's in Florida still. And last year we've been doing a lot of FaceTime, but we can't visit. So I'm actually planning a trip down there after my second vaccine. So good to see them.
I always talk about you with Prigmore. I was asking about how you're doing, and we're fans of you, even though I never actually talked to you this. And I thought this was an opportunity for me to get to know you. I'm like, just drag you on a podcast. Even though my topic is Black and Brown community, but it's just an excuse for me to bring you on and let people know how awesome you are, and just share you with the world.
Well, I was honestly kind of terrified. But
why? I
don't know. I'm always, a couple years ago, I guess, Helene Combs-Dreiling was the AIA president, and she was say yes to things, say yes to opportunities. And I've been trying to do that more, but I've never been somebody who wants to talk about myself, or, that I'm a deep introvert in that way. But if you get me in a room and I've got to run a meeting, or I've got a purpose, I'm fine. But I've never really wanted to toot my own horn, so to speak, or talk about myself. I always feel there's somebody else more interesting, or something else more interesting to say or hear about. So, but yeah, Kathy's, I guess, been our conduit of awesomeness for each other. It's like, yeah, what's she up to these days? What's Melissa doing? So
yeah, same. She left when you left Shalom, and you went to BBB, and the emails I get from WIA, and I just wanted to get to know you. And I've always wanted to get to know you. It's just time
and work and stuff. I get it. No, this is great. I'm glad we're doing this. BBB has been a good change for me. There's 3 offices, which SBA was really only one. So there's been different initiatives and different things that I've been able to experience. And one of them was the Open Channel, which is really an equity-based discussion in the office. And another one that happened after George Floyd's murder was the Our Voice, which was started with a conversation with one of the partners and one of the Black architects in the office, and how are you doing? And then it growing into Our Voice, which is, now a promotion of Black and Brown architects and in the profession. So I think that should be a future podcast for you. Happy to connect you to the group. But it's been really great to see how supportive and how much the partners are listening to the different challenges that everyone is facing, and whether it's LGBTQ or whether it's women or now BIPOC, and seeing how they're trying. Seeing an effort is obviously something that is a positive thing. Seeing that they're listening and that they are trying to make changes and putting out impact statements when George Floyd was murdered, and recently with all the Asian violence. And it's good to know that there's a statement out there that the company has.
One thing I've always loved about you or admired about you is your mouth and how blunt you can be. And I think that's a gorgeous quality of yours. Have you ever been discriminated against?
My husband might not agree with you about the directness, but yeah, I am a pretty direct person.
Hey, same here.
I've tried with this self-awareness and active listening and self-awareness is really just trying to temper what I say to help the audience hear it better. But I wouldn't say that I've been silenced so much because of my Asian heritage. I mean, obviously, growing up, I was surrounded by Caucasians and I didn't really think of myself as different until the things that are now considered microaggressions were happening. We were sometimes called names in school, chink and gook, and it didn't really affect me as much because I didn't really know what that was, you know? Mm-hmm. And then when in my first couple jobs, being told that I spoke English really well, or you speak English very good. Well, I speak it well, but and I think more so that I felt discriminated against because I was a woman and that I looked young. And I just always felt that, you know, that appearance of not belonging because you're young and dumb was more of a thing that I felt more worried about as far as an image. And so Amy Weinstein once told me, always be the most prepared person in the room. And so I really took that to heart too, just always trying to be as prepared as possible for meetings or whatever. And I don't know, I wasn't really able to prepare for this, but I was trying to think about what I wanted to say and what my message might be. So I do feel very fortunate that I haven't had a lot of discrimination against me in that way. And that I've been in the academic world and then here in a more urban environment have been able to be considered taken seriously and valued for my brain and not from the color of my skin or what I look because I'm a woman. Just a couple of years ago, my sister was in a Walmart in Florida and was with her children and was insulted in a racially discriminated against by somebody in Walmart. And just, where are we in this kind of time and day and age that this is still happening? And so it still happens, and seeing things on TV now with all of the violence against Asians and the COVID China virus stuff that the former, he who must not be named, kept
Voldemort, yeah.
It's just been really horrible. And so now it's a reckoning of a new sort for me, is figuring out how this all connects back to me and how I was raised and how I should feel. I kind of feel assimilated to Caucasians because I was raised in that environment, but I'm also Asian and I have felt those, you know, microaggressions and understand what it is to be just because I'm not a white male and have had it super easy. Why I fit in with the new conversation and how to talk about it. And the last few weeks after the shooting in Atlanta has really kind of been, well, you know what? I don't know how to feel about this. I feel really horrible about it. I feel horrible that it's happening to people in general. And how does it impact me? And how can I make a statement or speak up or whatever? And so I attended this AIA NOMA event, you know, a couple of weeks ago in DC and NOMA about stopping Asian hate. And it was a really good panel discussion. And it felt one of the women's stories was really similar to mine, where she has Caucasian family and was raised mostly in a Caucasian world, but then is experiencing kind of life as an Asian, but an American, and how you feel. And we're actually going to screen it at the office and I'm going to help co-moderate it. And so hopefully sharing my story, Michelle Obama says you should do, is going to help kind of heal that process and make it a little bit easier to talk about. And actually just makes you think about where you are and where you've been and what you should be doing and how you can hopefully use your voice in a positive way to help other people cope and figure out, you know, their way as well.
One of the things that I want to touch upon, but I don't know how to touch upon this, how to be politically correct and at the same time not offend anybody. With the Stop Asian Hate, what the media tried to do was butt against the Asian community with the Black community. And my experience growing up, the only interaction that I had with the Asian community is with the corner store, or the liquor store, or the carryout. That was it. And it was among the others.
Yeah, that's the box that I normally check when it's Caucasian or Hispanic or other.
Other.
I was surrounded mostly by white people when I grew up. And when I was in elementary school for 1 year before I changed it, there was a program with bilingual for Vietnamese. And my parents are from Vietnam. I was born in Pensacola, Florida. And so, but I never got to see those people because they were always in a different part of the school And as a kindergartner and not really figuring out what's going on anyways, why are they different from us or whatever. So I was always, kind of around Caucasians and white kids, and really FAMU was different because it was a fully Black school. But at the same time, I feel because I was always around white people, being around people who aren't me, being around Black people wasn't really a big deal, because I've been around all these other people for a while. So it's cool, I guess. I don't want to say all along that I don't see color, because I mean, that's, obviously not true. But at the same time, I wasn't thinking that I should be afraid of these people or these people are weird or whatever. It's just kind of just happened. And there were some really bright kids in my class that I was still going to try to challenge myself to be just as good as them, Black or white or whatever. So it was, but yeah, I see what you mean. As food should be one of those great connectors and that thing that brings us together. So if you love my food, you can't hate me, right? So it's just food is the thing that should be healing us all instead of dividing us even further. It's just sit down with a bowl of noodles and some spicy food. We all have the noodle dish. We all have some sort of dumpling or fried delicious thing with meat inside, or all cultures do. So let's just all bring our food together and figure it out.
Did your parents ever try to introduce you to, hey, I'm gonna let you learn Mandarin or something, or were they?
Yeah, no, it was, I think, at the time and what I've been reading, there was a BuzzFeed article a few weeks ago that was kind of an editorial, photo editorial kind of story, but it was mostly Korean Americans. And at the time, you brought home your baby and you just assimilated them, and there wasn't anything about their own culture. And it wasn't something that was really thought about. You were just giving this child a home and you were raising them. And you kind of had your white blinders on where you didn't think that, well, they'll just fit in, and that's how it works. And so I think it did to a point. I feel like my parents didn't have a lot, but they provided as much love as they could. And I can't fault them for how we were raised and what was done at the time. They both were pretty poor growing up. And my mom was one of 16 kids in Kentucky, and they didn't have running water when she was in high school. And it was that. Can you imagine not having running water in high school? So it was a different place that she came from, and just being able to have kids and spoil them and buy them things that they don't need. And it was kind of the most guidance we got. And also it was just about love and not necessarily preparing us for what other people would say to you. Or I don't think I ever told my parents when we were kind of bullied in that way or were called names or anything. It was just something that you were kind of ashamed of and you didn't say anything to them. Didn't want to upset other people. So yeah, they didn't prepare us. And nowadays it's great that when, I hear people are adopting Asian kids and they're teaching them their native tongue and things like that. I do have some biological brothers and sisters. We were fostered by my parents before we were adopted. And so I have vague remembrances of my biological dad and meeting with the family. I reconnected with my sister and brother. I have two brothers, but really connected with one sister the most. We identify most with. The brothers are kind of doing their own thing, the guys anyways. They don't want to catch up. So been kind of hearing her side of how she thought we were raised, and she thought we were rich because we were adopted by these white families. I was like, no, we were poor. We were just barely getting by for the longest time. We didn't have vacations where you go anywhere that is not visiting a relative. We weren't doing anything that was special, We didn't go to camp in the winter, the summer, or we didn't have ballet and all these things that all the kids do now. We just stayed at home and played and watched Nickelodeon and had each other to play with, And so it was just interesting to kind of reconnect and then see the perspective and kind of understand the dynamic. Well, they thought we were living this different life, and we were just living a life that was just kind of regular, boring, but not what they expected. So it's been good to reconnect and get to know each other as adults and try to figure out how we can still be in each other's lives, but without those misconceptions of growing up and all.
What did you learn about yourself when you reconnected?
Well, I felt really, it's hard because my sister's father, she was always in his life. And so when hearing us say mom and dad and it not being him was kind of a strange thing. But I think she's been really good about it, and has always understood that we grew up differently. I think one of the things that I've learned about it is just they had a really challenging life without both parents, and somebody to kind of make sure they stayed out of trouble. And that Alice and I didn't grow up with much, but we grew up with two loving parents who were at least looking out for us. So I feel gratitude for what I had, but and it's not like I felt guilty for what they didn't have either, but being able to kind of reconnect and try to figure out what our commonalities are. The whole introvert thing was also hard, trying to get out of what I'm comfortable with and meeting other people and trying to figure out what they liked and all that. So, but food has always been a good thing, you know. We can always connect over food and what we eat and what we talked about, and starting to learn about each other and family and things like that. It's been good.
Do you cook?
Yeah, I kind of cook a weird mishmash of stuff. My parents were stationed in Japan for a while, so I cook some more. You know, I learned some kind of hodgepodge stuff that my mom used to cook, and then I cook Southern stuff. It's all over the place. And then if I ever liked a recipe, I would always try to figure out how to cook it. Or I think because, you know, I had so many international friends, if they made something that I really liked, we would cook together. It was always something that was something social that we did. Lately, though, I feel cooking has become a chore. I think it's because with COVID, it's, oh my God, do I have to do the dishes again? And it's cleaning the kitchen all the time. So yeah, normally I've been cooking lunch and dinner, kind of meal prep stuff for the week. I just have been dreading Sundays because that's kind of when it has to happen. And this, you know what? We're going to try a meal plan place that just brings you prepared food. And I already feel better about today. Maybe it's because we're talking. Maybe it's because I just know in 5 hours I'm not going to be in the kitchen. It's got to be something that you want to do and not something that you feel forced and obligated to do. So, but yeah, I didn't really get into the whole baking thing last year when everybody was doing the COVID baking thing, mostly because I couldn't find yeast. But yeah, when there's no pressure to cook, I do enjoy cooking. And it was always something that my friends would do. One of my best friends from college, Kiko, Japanese. So we would do sushi nights, and she would show us how real Japanese sushi is made. And, you know, we'd make little street taco type stuff. And this is just regular tacos, but it's nori and rice instead of tortillas or something. Yeah. So, see, everything is related. Everything is connected. So, and then some of my other good friend is Puerto Rican. And so we would try a lot of her dishes and stuff like that. And so it was always something fun to do when it was a social thing. But, you know, I don't know. I still love to cook, but it's also, it just can't be a thing that I have to do when I'm working 12 hours a day. And, you know, it's just, could somebody else help me here? You know?
Yeah. Yeah. How has work from home been for you other than the food?
Our firm was really good about the support and making it a seamless transition. I was fortunate when I started the office, they gave me a laptop, so I'll just go home, VPN in, and I figured I'm going to take my chair, I'm going to take everything that I need, even if I'm home for a week, right? 2 weeks at the most. I don't want to sit in a dining room chair, so I'll just, I drive to work, so I'll just take my chair, and I took everything that I thought I would need. And a year later, I'm still here, but it's been great for me. I can really focus, even though I'm working a lot longer. The lack of a commute has been great, other than what I said earlier about missing out on my podcast time and getting to kind of have that drive time to listen to things. But I think the biggest challenge has been mentoring from afar, so to speak, and making sure the younger people are still understanding what they need to do. In an office, you can say, hey, come here, look at this, or you can look at their screen and say, well, let's talk about what you're doing right now. And, you know, you've got that, and you can look at somebody in the eye and see if they get what you're saying.
Yeah.
You know, it's a little more challenging when you're trying to do it from a computer, and it's not, you can sit down and sketch a detail together and talk about why this is good. I might sketch something and try to show it or take a picture of it and send it. But there's definitely the lacking of assistance with developing the younger people professionally and trying to get them to feel they're engaged and that they're learning and that they're doing the right thing, and then not constantly having to like check in with them, because then when am I going to get my work done, which is normally after 6 p.m. anyways. So trying to still be a good mentor and lead the teams and making sure everybody has what they've got to do on the forefront and what's important and priorities, and then trying to get my work done. And then constantly being on meetings, constantly meeting. And Teams has been good, and we use WebEx. And so finally getting used to that platform and constantly being on some sort of web camera. Sometimes I would have literally 8 meetings a day, and it's pretty exhausting, especially when you're running the meeting and you can't really multitask, where I know like everybody else is getting a little bit of work done while I'm talking and running the show, and then all the emails that pile up from when I was in a meeting. But yeah, I love it from being at home. And we've been just recently talking about how do we get back to work. And I think there's a hybrid scenario in it because we all know we can do it. And there's something to be said about being happy, keeping your employees happy.
Right.
So being able to do this part-time at home and then being able to go in and have those meetings with the team and seeing each other. I went in a couple of weeks ago. We've been doing an on-off A week and B week where we're small enough that we can have some people in the office, and wound up talking to my coworker, and we were just, it was almost, I didn't realize it was almost 2.5 hours that we were talking after the meeting because we were just able to talk and look at a screen and talk about what the issue was. And really just, even though we were still pointing at a screen kind of 6 feet apart, we were still in the same room and we were able to kind of just be organic, I guess, and about whatever we needed to talk about and not feel, okay, well, what is the next point on the agenda or whatever. So what about you?
I'm all about freedom and flexibility. As long as you get the work done, it shouldn't matter where you are.
I agree. I think the optics have been always, you've got to be seen, literally seen, to be showing that you're putting in the hours and all. And I think that's where we know we can do it now. And our firm was always really, you're in the office too before this. You know, it wasn't, I was working from home, even though I had a laptop, I just was always in the office anyways. But now that we know that we can do it, and like if somebody's got a sick kid and they got to stay home, they can work from home. Or if they have a sniffle and everybody's still COVID phobic, let them stay home and work and not freak everybody else. But, you know, with DC, you've got to sit at your desk with the mask on and take 8 calls a day. I'd really rather not, thank you. So it's been nice that we've had the benefit of being able to choose if we want to come back or not right now until we figure it out. And then we've been doing these kind of small town hall style meetings where new partner in charge, who was just promoted as a woman, and she's been kind of on a listening tour, so to speak, of what everybody feels and what's been a challenge, what's been good, bad, and how to get back to some sort of new normal. So I do think that the office has been really good throughout the whole COVID experience about checking in with us, having small group meetings and making sure we're all abreast of what's happening, but also just checking in. And I try to do that too, where I'm just checking in individually with my team members and just say, hey, just how's it going? And we now do these coffee chats on Fridays. There's this little virtual world called GatherTown. I don't know if you've heard of it or not, but you can put in a plan. So we put it in the office plan and we all sit at the kitchen table and we have coffee. And so you have an avatar that's sitting in the plan, but then you're also on screen, you know, so if you're talking to somebody and you get close to them, you're talking to them. But if you start moving away, you start leaving the conversation. So it's kind of your avatar, however the proximity to that person is, you can have that conversation. So we all kind of sit at the table, sometimes on the table, sometimes next to each other, but we're all able to have just a conversation, and it's random stuff, not about work for the most part. And nice to kind of keep that, you know, just social cordial thing happening without being together. So
Wow.
well, you should check it out, GatherTown. And I think Virginia Tech was doing it first. And so that's how we learned about it, because one of our colleagues is a teacher, an adjunct there. And so they had done it for their Christmas party and they put in the plan. And actually we attended they had a career day and it was all virtual in GatherTown. And so we had our own room within the WAC, and then you could see little avatars coming up to talk. And if they were sitting at the table with us, you could also see people who were pacing, wanting to talk, but they were outside the table area. So it's like, well, we should probably stop talking because this person's pacing over here to, you know, have a conversation. So it's an interesting way to kind of have reality and then virtual still together.
We'll check it out and see how it goes.
Yeah, there's a free version that's what we use, and then there's, you know, more involved stuff. So
any aspirations or goals? And this is inside or outside architecture?
I know it sounds cheesy, but I always am trying to improve myself in some way or another. Over the last year, fitness things have really kept me sane. So I've always committed to the first 30 minutes of the day to myself after dog walks or whatever, try to do some stuff. So I've done a couple of fitness challenges, and we did one with our office that nearly killed me because some people are really competitive. But I have no problem motivating myself to do those kind of things for myself. And then really trying to be a better leader and trying to be a better person at the office. So attending different seminars, attending different webinars on management or leadership, and reading books on it, and just figuring out how other things and cause and effect have really impacts on us. And so I've really gotten into economics and freakonomics and socio impact type things. So that have become kind of little side interests of me. So yeah, so it's always trying to be a better person to help other people for my own satisfaction, but then also how I can kind of contribute that to the world, one person at a time if it has to be. So.
Are you interested at all in climbing up in AIA at all, being president of either Nova or National or anything like that?
It's always been something that I've kind of pushed back on, mostly because I just never had the time to commit to. I was on the board for a year, and it was really hard because getting off at 4 to go to the board meetings, that's just not something I could do. And whether it was an optic that I was having versus what my boss was having, and maybe not even having that talk, hey, you care that I'm going to have to leave early to go to this meeting. But then the work that it's done so kind of grassroots on the ground is where I feel I can make the most difference, being part of these committees and being part of being able to plan events that are here versus, and I appreciate the structure of how it works, but being secretary, then being this and then this before you actually become president, it's a 5-year commitment that, I just throw so much of my own time into work and kind of projects that mostly work, but I don't feel I ever had the time to do it. But when I see Corey Claiborne, who I met at ELA, he was just another guy, but now he's president of the Virginia AIA or whatever. And it's great to see that some people can just aspire and do that. But I also feel I'm so rooted in architecture and actual work that it's hard for me to give that much of a commitment of time to do that kind of structured path. I'm in a mentor program right now, and I work a lot, but it's a choice that I make because I know that I have to nurture and develop these people and get them focused on what they need to do. And it's a choice that I make. So maybe test it out on a small project and see how you feel about it. But it's a lot of work and it's a commitment. And I don't want to say that I'm just a workaholic, and I don't want to say that I'm just doing it for the optics of how hard she's working. I work hard, and I feel a lot of satisfaction most of the time from what I do. But in another life, I could be, I wish I had gone back to school and had really kind of dug into social work and really how people work. And so many people are coming with an anthropology background. So that would have been cool. Really the study of humans and humanity. And that's really what it every day is, working with other people to build things for other people. And having that kind of background and understanding would have been nice to have. So
you're definitely a people person, considering that you consider yourself an introvert.
Yeah, I'm really shy, and I don't necessarily contribute much to conversation sometimes when I feel other people are doing just fine without it. But yeah, I feel if it's an important topic. I teach ARE classes. Obviously, I got to talk about that, or women's causes or issues or whatever it is. If I have to talk about it, but it's most of the time I'm not saying anything. But most of the time now I'm finding I have to speak up. I guess one situation I had, I just thought about it. I was waiting tables in Tallahassee, and this guy who was a regular, I don't know why, everybody just kind of rolled their eyes when he came in. He thought he was so awesome, but we were all just, oh, it's him again. He made some comment about me being some sort of foreigner, and it got back to me. And so the next time I saw him, I was like, hey, I'm sorry, was there something wrong with your service or whatever? But I'm not foreign. I was born in Pensacola. I'm from here. And I remember I did stand up for myself there. So I was like, oh yeah, I did do that.
And then you punched the guy in the face. And
he never wanted me as a server again. I was like, that's fine with me. I quit. I soon though, I think I quit the job because I realized that as much as I am interested in people, I really did not waiting on people. I really hate people in this realm. So that's going to stop. And I actually got a job, doing building commissioning research or something for the school. And I was like, this is much better. Like
than waiting tables.
I'm much better now kind of moving on past that. When I waited tables in Florida in a tourist town, I could make a lot of money, and it was great to be able to support myself that way and go home for the weekend and wait tables and make enough money to support me for the week and then, go back the next weekend or whatever. So, but that was one time when I did stand up for myself.
Any aspirations of being a principal?
Yeah, I've talked about it already. One of the reasons I left my last firm is I just felt there was a ceiling, whether it was glass or macrame or whatever, I just wasn't going to get there. There were great people there that were always going to be in front of me or whatever. And having one-on-one conversations and trying to promote myself wasn't doing it. And so I just had a good friend at BBB who we were working together in the the ARE prep program. And so I'd see her all the time, and we were having lunch, and we've been kind of each other's leadership buddies. And she's been one of the people I, go to with questions, and I guess part of my squad. And he's like, hey, I know you're probably going to say no, but we're looking for somebody to kind of take over the private development work. And if you're interested, she kind of was saying it. I know you're going to say no, but then I was like, what? I'm going to say maybe, and let's have that conversation. So it turned out that maybe became a yes. And I was able to, I'm going to just start fresh, and I'm going to state my intentions early. And I want to be able to aspire to these kind of things. And I want to be, if I can one day, a real leader in the firm. And with the firm being a partnership, there's really, instead of a sole proprietorship, there was really an opportunity to make that case. And so I think it's a definite possibility, and not next year, but I still believe that the hard work is going to pay off eventually, and that I could be a leader in a firm and then even be a better platform for women in leadership. So one of the great things is that two of the partners in our office are women. And so that was something that was a plus when I saw that, because even at the last firm, great men, but still men. And I think when Kathy came in, they had hired Kathy and another woman, Priya, and it was women of color. Whoa. It was a lot. And, so I just really am really grateful for, again, having those relationships that carried me to get the new job, and to have people who are invested in me and feel that I have the potential to do more for them and for myself and others. So,
You have any questions for me?
What do you want to be when you grow up?
I want to be a real housewife of Atlanta or LA or something. I don't know.
What made you want to have this podcast?
It's therapy for me, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
It's, why did I get into architecture? Why is it that dealing with these exams have been very difficult for me? Some trauma there I've uncovered, not publicly, but in talking to other people. And when I edit, I go back and I listen, because it's kind of hard to listen and ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
But so when I go back and I really hear what you said, I reflect on that. And in some instances, it does come out when I do the intro. But most of the time I write down, not so much a journal, but just keep notes, or there may be a quote that someone said and I would write it down or something. But it's for selfish reasons. I have to tell people that I started this podcast is just having Black and brown talk about architecture, because we don't do it in that space. And then investigating how I grew up, and in turn, my family, and investigating the area in itself. So yeah, that's why I started this podcast.
Well, I think, that it's very true. When you're listening or when you're re-listening, you do learn a little bit more about yourself as much as whoever you're interviewing, and then giving yourself that space and that time to kind of just commit to either writing it down or whatever. That's almost a meditative thing, where you're not thinking about all the other crap that's happening or all the other things that are going on, and that, it's kind of a focused time to spend on something.
So was this interview as terrifying as you thought it would be?
No, not as bad. It's good. I'm trying to get better at speaking about myself, and
the world needs to know about you.
Michelle can share her story. I guess I could share mine.
You can share your story too. You could write a book called Coming instead of
Michelle said, I'm coming. Okay. Good seeing you. Take care.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
Hey listeners, I have an exciting announcement. I decided to launch a membership program for the show, where you have a chance to support me and the show directly. I love creating the show, and it means the world to me that you all tune in to keep hearing me week after week. But it takes an immense amount of time and energy to produce. I want to keep the show going, and I want to invest in its growth. And I also want you to become a partner with me in this journey. That's why I'm excited to give you a chance to officially become a supporter of the show at glow.fm/archispolly, ARCHISPOLLY, or by clicking the link in the show notes. It's quick and easy. It takes less than 30 seconds and just takes clicking a link in the show notes and using Apple or Google Pay. You don't have to create any new logins, and you can contribute as much or as little as you like. If this show is part of your day or week and you like what I'm doing, then visit glow.fm/archispolly, all one word, and support me and the show in any way you can today.